The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward like a cathedral made of light and metal. 7 massive seats formed a circle, each one holding a representative from the most powerful species in known space. Today's meeting was supposed to be simple. The Vryn Collective wanted to expand their mining operations into Sector 447. The Keltharan Empire objected standard territorial disputes that happened every few months. Ambassador Krelix of the Vryn stood at the center of the chamber. His 4 arms gestured at the holographic star map floating above them. The other council members looked bored. They had seen this argument 1,000 times before. "If I may direct the council's attention to the historical records," Krelix said, his translator converting his clicking language into something others could understand. "This sector was declared neutral territory 300 years ago because of the human quarantine zone." Several council members shifted in their seats. Humans. Nobody talked about humans anymore. "The humans are extinct," said High Chancellor Vexana of the Keltharan Empire. Her scales shimmered under the chamber's lights. "They destroyed themselves centuries ago. Nuclear war, climate collapse, the usual mistakes primitive species make. Why should ancient history affect current policy?" Krelix pulled up another display. Images of Earth flickered in the hologram. Blue oceans, green continents, then fire, destruction, silence. According to our records, humanity went silent in the year 2237. All transmissions stopped. Survey probes sent to their homeworld detected no technological signatures. The species was declared extinct by unanimous council vote in 202441. A junior archivist named SCI-FI sat in the observer section, watching the proceedings on a datapad. She was young for her species, barely 50 cycles old. Her job was to verify historical claims made during council sessions. Something about Krelix's presentation bothered her. She pulled up the original survey data from Earth. The files were old, encrypted with outdated security protocols. As she dug deeper, her hearts began beating faster. The energy signatures in the data didn't match natural disaster patterns. They matched weapons fire concentrated, deliberate weapons fire from orbit. Before she could process this information, her datapad pinged with an alert. New sensor data from the quarantine zone, unusual energy readings near the edge of what used to be human space. SCI-FI stood up, interrupting the council session. "Honored members, I apologize, but we have anomalous readings from Sector 447. The council members turned to look at her. Young archivists did not interrupt council sessions. "Explain," said Vexana, her voice sharp. "There are energy signatures at the edge of the quarantine zone. They match no known technology in our databases." Krelix waved a dismissive arm. "Sensor ghosts. That region of space has unstable readings due to the ancient asteroid impacts. It happens all the time." The council voted to ignore the readings. The session continued. SCI-FI sat back down, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Far beyond the council's sensors, in the darkness between stars, a massive ship hung in silence. The vessel was angular and predatory, covered in armor plating that absorbed sensor scans instead of reflecting them. On its hull, barely visible, were letters in an ancient language. UEDS. Indomitable. On the bridge, Admiral Victoria Cross stood with her hands clasped behind her back. She was tall for a human, with iron-gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Scars crossed her dark skin, souvenirs from decades of military service. Her uniform was black with silver trim, displaying more medals than seemed possible for one person to earn. Around her, the bridge crew worked in quiet efficiency. Holographic displays showed the Galactic Council chamber in real time. They had been intercepting council transmissions for 3 years now, learning everything about the species that thought humanity was dead. "They're talking about us again," said Commander Park, the ship's intelligence officer. "Same story they always tell. We killed ourselves, natural disasters, primitive mistakes. Victoria's jaw tightened. She had heard the lies so many times they no longer made her angry. Instead, she felt cold, focused. "How long until the fleet is in position?" she asked. 18 hours, Admiral. All 22 colony worlds have confirmed their readiness. The reserve fleets are standing by. Victoria walked to the main viewport. Out there, scattered across hundreds of light years, 72 warships waited for her command. Each one represented decades of work, sacrifice, and determination. Humanity had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. She thought about calling it off. They could stay hidden, build a quiet civilization far from council space. But then she remembered grandmother's face, the faces of 4 billion dead, the children who never got to grow up, the future that was stolen. "Begin Operation Lazarus," she said quietly. "Send the signal to all fleets. We're going home." Across human space, warships that had been hidden for generations powered up their engines. Crews that had trained their entire lives for this mission moved to battle stations. And in the quarantine zone around Earth, reconnaissance drones stopped hiding and began broadcasting on every frequency the Council used. The message was simple: humanity remembers. In the Council chamber, SSREF's datapad exploded with alerts. Energy signatures throughout the quarantine zone. Dozens of them. Hundreds. All appearing simultaneously. This time, nobody could dismiss them as sensor ghosts. The trade hub of Nexathor orbited a blue giant star at the crossroads of 3 major hyperspace lanes. Every day, thousands of ships passed through the station carrying goods, passengers, and information across Council space. The station itself was enormous, large enough to house 2 million permanent residents and accommodate 50,000 visiting vessels at any given time. Station controller Gentar watched the traffic patterns on his displays with the calm of someone who had been doing this job for 20 years, freighters hauling ore from the outer rim, passenger liners filled with tourists, military vessels on routine patrol. Everything was normal. Then the alarms started screaming. "Sir, we have a massive spatial distortion at grid reference 447-992, said the sensor operator, his voice rising with panic. "Something's coming out of FTL, multiple contacts, big ones." Gentar pulled up the readings. His breathing stopped. The distortion was larger than anything he had ever seen. Ships emerging from faster-than-light travel always created ripples in space. But this was like watching a moon appear out of nowhere. "Get me the defense fleet now!" The distortion peaked, and reality seemed to tear open. 12 ships appeared in a perfect formation. They were massive, each one easily the size of a Council battle cruiser, but their design was wrong. Angular where Council ships were smooth, dark where others were bright. They bristled with weapons that Gentar couldn't identify. "Unknown vessels, this is Nexathor Station Control. You have entered controlled space without authorization. Identify yourselves immediately, or you will be fired upon." The defense fleet was already moving 20 Council warships, representing 4 different species, formed a blockade between the unknown vessels and the station. Their weapons powered up targeting systems locked on. For a long moment, nothing happened. The strange ships simply hung in space, their dark hulls reflecting the light of the blue giant. Then every screen in the station, every communication device, every holographic display suddenly showed the same image. A woman in a black military uniform stood against a backdrop of stars. Her face was weathered, her eyes hard. "This is Admiral Victoria Cross of the United Earth Defense Fleet," she said. Her voice was clear, calm, and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. "Humanity did not die. We evolved, we survived, and we remember everything you did to us." Chaos erupted across the station. Humanity? Impossible. Everyone knew humans were extinct. They had killed themselves centuries ago. The Council Defense Fleet commander, a Vryn admiral named Torkson, opened a channel. This is Fleet Admiral Torkson of the Council Defense Forces. I don't know who you are or what game you're playing, but you have 10 minutes to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Victoria's image smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Admiral, you have exactly 1 minute to withdraw your vessels beyond the hyperspace limit. After that, any ship within weapons range will be considered hostile. You're outnumbered, Torkson said. Surrender now and you'll be treated fairly under Council law. 60 seconds, Admiral. I suggest you start moving. Torkson cut the channel. He looked at his tactical officer. What are we dealing with? Unknown, sir. Their ships don't match any designs in our database. Weapon systems are completely foreign. They're using some kind of stealth technology. We can barely get a sensor lock. Fire a warning shot across the lead vessel's bow. A Council destroyer launched a plasma bolt. It streaked through space toward the human flagship. 200 meters from impact, the bolt simply vanished. No explosion, no shields flaring, it just ceased to exist. Sir, their defensive systems just absorbed our plasma bolt. It didn't even slow down. It just disappeared. Victoria's voice came over the open channel again. That was your warning shot. This is mine. The human fleet didn't move. They didn't fire their weapons. Instead, every ship simultaneously activated their sensor arrays at full power. The electromagnetic pulse was so intense, it fried half the electronics on the Council ship's weapons systems went offline. Navigation computers crashed. Communication arrays sparked and died. All ships, withdraw, Torkson ordered, using backup systems. Fall back to the secondary defense line. The Council fleet retreated. The human ships didn't pursue. They simply took up position around the hyperspace lanes, establishing a perfect blockade. Nothing could enter or leave Nexathor without passing through their formation. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the destroyer Retribution, watching the Council ships flee. He was younger than Admiral Cross, barely 40, but his eyes held the same hardness. His grandparents had been among the survivors of Earth. They had died before he was born, but their stories lived on. All stations report ready, Captain, said his first officer. We have complete control of the hyperspace lanes. Marcus nodded. Around Nexathor, 5 other human battle groups appeared at other major trade hubs. The blockade wasn't just local, it was galactic. In one coordinated move, humanity had cut off the primary trade routes of Council space. Back in the Council chamber on Axis Prime, pandemonium had replaced the usual orderly proceedings. Representatives shouted at each other. Some demanded military action, others called for negotiation. A few simply sat in shock. Ambassador Krelix was frantically searching through archives, trying to find any record of Council interactions with humanity. There had to be something. The humans were claiming the Council had attacked them. But there was nothing in the official records. No war, no conflict. Just the notation that humanity had gone extinct due to self-inflicted disasters. This makes no sense, he muttered, his forearms moving across multiple data terminals. Why would they blame us for their own extinction? Essereth appeared beside him, her datapad in hand. Ambassador, I've been reviewing the original survey data from Earth. The damage patterns are inconsistent with nuclear war or natural disasters. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting someone lied about what happened to humanity. And I think I know where to find the truth. She pulled up a file directory. It was sealed with the highest level encryption, requiring authorization from all 7 Council members to open. The creation date was 2237, the exact year humanity supposedly went extinct. What is this? Krelix asked. I don't know, but it's been hidden for 300 years. Whatever's in there, someone didn't want it found. Across Council space, the impact of the blockades was immediate. Freight couldn't move, passenger ships were stranded. Military vessels couldn't reach their assigned sectors. The economy began collapsing within hours. The Council had no choice. They sent a message to Admiral Cross, requesting negotiations. Her response was simple. Open the sealed archive first. Let the truth come out, then we'll talk. In his quarters aboard the Indomitable, Victoria stood at the window, looking out at the stars. Behind her, the door chimed, "Come in." Commander Park entered, carrying a report. "Admiral, we're receiving complaints from Fleet Admiral Zhao. He thinks we should have attacked. He says the blockade isn't enough." Victoria sighed. She had known this would happen. Zhao commanded the carrier battle group Vengeance. He had lost his entire family in the bombardment. His hatred of the Council species ran deep. "Tell Zhao that we win this by being right, not by being ruthless. If we slaughter them, we become what they feared we would be. We prove they were correct to try to destroy us." "He won't like that answer, ma'am." "He doesn't have to like it. He just has to follow orders." After Park left, Victoria returned to the window. She wondered if she was making the right choice. The human fleet could devastate Council worlds. They had the weapons. They had the numbers. 300 years of preparation had made them powerful, but Grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "We didn't survive to become monsters. We survived to prove we were better than they thought." The question was whether the rest of humanity agreed. 3 weeks had passed since the blockades began. The Galactic Council was falling apart from the inside. Trade had completely stopped. Food shipments couldn't reach colony worlds. Medical supplies sat in warehouses, unable to move. Riots had broken out on 17 planets. The 7 Council leaders stood in a secure chamber deep beneath the surface of Axis Prime. Between them floated a holographic lock showing 7 empty slots. Each leader held a crystalline key, the only way to open the sealed archive from 2237. High Chancellor Vexana of the Keltheran Empire looked at the others. "Are we certain we want to do this? Once we open this file, we cannot unsee what's inside." "The humans won't negotiate until we do," said Krelix. "We have no choice. Our civilizations are collapsing." "What if the archive proves them right?" asked Minister Hallex of the Dendari Confederacy. "What if our founders really did attack humanity?" "Then we face the consequences," said Vexana. "Together, insert your keys." One by one, the 7 leaders placed their crystalline keys into the holographic lock. The archive unsealed with a flash of light. Data began streaming across the displays. What they saw made them wish they had never opened the file. The first document was a threat assessment from the year 2235. It detailed humanity's rapid technological progress. In just 200 years, humans had gone from primitive flying machines to establishing colonies on 3 moons and sending probes to nearby star systems. The report concluded that humanity would likely achieve faster-than-light travel within 50 years. The second document was a council meeting transcript. The 7 founders, the original leaders who had established the council 500 years ago, debated what to do about humanity. "They are too aggressive," one founder had written. "Their history is filled with wars. They turn everything into weapons. If we allow them to reach the stars, they will challenge us within a century." "We should offer them council membership," another had argued. "Guide them. Teach them." "Too risky. They reproduce too quickly. They adapt too fast. We vote for extinction." The vote had been unanimous, 7-0. Execute humanity before they became a threat. The third document was an operations plan. It detailed how council ships would position themselves in orbit around Earth. They would use kinetic weapons, massive metal rods dropped from space, to create impacts that would look like natural asteroid strikes. No energy signatures that could be traced, no evidence of weapons fire. Just rocks falling from the sky. The plan even included estimated casualties, 4 billion dead within the first hour, complete extinction within 6 months. Vexana felt sick. She watched the video logs from the actual attack. Council ships in orbit, human cities visible below, then fire. So much fire. The impacts were massive, each one releasing energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. Mountains crumbled, oceans evaporated, the atmosphere filled with ash. "We murdered them," whispered Hallex. "We murdered an entire species because we were afraid of competition." But the archive had more. It showed transmissions from Earth during the bombardment. Human voices broadcast on every frequency, begging for help, pleading for mercy, asking what they had done wrong. "Please, we don't understand. Why are you doing this? We never attacked you. We never even met you." The Council ships had received every transmission. They had ignored them all. The bombardment continued for 3 days until Earth's electromagnetic signature flatlined. The founders had celebrated, "The threat is eliminated. File this under natural extinction. No one needs to know we were involved." Krelix stumbled to a chair. His 4 arms shook. "How could they do this? How could our founders commit genocide?" "Fear," said Vexana quietly. "They saw humanity's potential and were terrified of losing their power, so they destroyed an entire civilization." "What do we do now?" asked another council member. Before anyone could answer, alarms blared throughout the building. Sreth's voice came over the intercom. "All council members, please be aware. I have just broadcast the complete archive contents on every public channel in council space everyone knows. Everyone has seen what was done." The council leaders rushed to the main chamber. Every screen showed the archive footage. Every species across council space was watching their founders commit genocide. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Protests erupted on every council. World citizens demanded answers. How could their government do this? Some species leaders tried to claim ignorance, but the evidence was overwhelming. The founders of the Galactic Council had collectively murdered 4 billion innocent beings. Meanwhile, Captain Marcus Chen led a strike team to Earth itself. The journey through the quarantine zone was haunting. Automated defense satellites, now 300 years old, still orbited the planet. Human ships passed by them unchallenged. The satellites recognized their transponder codes. The Retribution entered Earth's orbit. Marcus stood at the viewport, looking down at humanity's birthplace. From space, the scars were visible. Massive impact craters dotted every continent. The oceans were smaller than they should be. The ice caps had melted and refrozen multiple times, creating strange patterns. "Take us down to the landing site," he ordered. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere. They landed in what used to be New York City. The ruins stretched for kilometers. Collapsed buildings, now covered in 3 centuries of vegetation. Streets where millions once walked, silent and empty. Marcus's team wore environmental suits. The air was breathable, but barely. They walked through the ruins, past the skeletons of skyscrapers. In one building, they found the preserved remains of a shelter. Hundreds of bodies mummified by the dry air. People who had tried to survive but ran out of supplies. "Captain, you should see this," called one of his Marines. They had found a time capsule, sealed in an underground vault. Inside were messages from the survivors, handwritten letters on paper, preserved in plastic. "To whoever finds this, we were a young species, eager to meet others in the universe. We dreamed of friendship among the stars. Instead, the stars killed us. Please remember that we existed. Remember that we tried to be good. Remember that we died not knowing why." Marcus felt tears running down his face. He carefully collected the letters along with other artifacts. These would be placed in museums. The galaxy would see what they had destroyed. Back on the Indomitable, Admiral Victoria Cross received a transmission from Fleet Admiral Zhao. His face filled the screen, angry and determined. "Victoria, the Council just offered complete surrender, unconditional. They're willing to dissolve their government and submit to human authority." "I know I received the same message." "Then why haven't you accepted?" "We won. We can take everything." "Because that's not justice, Zhao. That's revenge. There's a difference. They killed 4 billion of us." And if we enslave them, we prove they were right to fear us. We become the monsters they thought we were. Zhao's face turned red. So what do you want? What's your plan? Victoria took a deep breath. I want a seat at the table. I want our species recognized as equals. I want the truth taught in every school on every council world. I want memorials for our dead. I want justice, not vengeance. That's not enough. It has to be enough, because if we choose revenge, we lose who we are. And then Earth really did die. Zhao cut the transmission. Victoria knew she had a problem. Her fleet was divided. Some officers agreed with her. Others agreed with Zhao. The question was, what would happen when she gave the order to stand down? Before she could worry about it further, Commander Park burst onto the bridge. Admiral, we have an emergency. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple contacts at the edge of Council space unknown origin. Unknown composition. They're heading this way. How many contacts? 600 and counting. And Admiral, they just destroyed a Council research station, 40,000 beings. Gone in less than a minute. Victoria felt cold spread through her chest. A new enemy. One that didn't care about the politics between humans, and the Council one that just wanted to destroy everything. Send a priority message to all human vessels and all Council ships. We have a bigger problem now. The new threat had a name in Council databases. The Devourers. They were a machine intelligence from beyond the galactic rim. Council scientists had detected their presence years ago, watching from the darkness, but assumed they were just observing. They had been wrong. In the emergency war room beneath Axis Prime, representatives from all 7 Council species gathered with human military officers. It was the first time both groups had sat at the same table. The tension was thick enough to cut. Admiral Victoria Cross stood at the head of the table, a holographic display showing the Devourer fleet's position. They'll reach the outer colonies in 72 hours. Every predictive model shows the same result. They will destroy everything in their path. High Chancellor Vexana leaned forward. Our defense fleets are scattered. Your blockades have disrupted our military formations. We cannot mount an effective defense in time. Then we fight together, Victoria said simply. You provide the numbers. We provide the tactical advantage. Why would you help us? Asked Krelix. We tried to exterminate your species. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Because my grandmother once told me something. She survived the bombardment, lived in an underground shelter for 3 years before the rescue ships found her. She said, we didn't survive genocide to become genociders ourselves. If we let your people die when we could save them, we become what you feared we would be. Your fleet Admiral Zhao disagrees, Vexana noted. We intercepted his communications. He wants us to burn. Zhao lost his entire family. I understand his anger, but he doesn't command this fleet, I do. Before anyone could respond, Sareth burst into the room. Honored members, I apologize for the interruption, but the public is demanding a tribunal. They want the truth about what happened to humanity to be formally recorded. They want those. 5 years had passed since the Battle of the Theta Margin. The galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. Admiral Victoria Cross, now retired, stood on an observation deck of the Marcus Chen Memorial Station below her. Earth rotated slowly. The planet looked different than it had 5 years ago. The scars were still visible but healing. Green was returning to the continents. The oceans were cleaner. Cities were being rebuilt, not just by humans, but by volunteers from all 8 species of the Galactic Union. She watched a transport ship land on the surface. It carried Vryn engineers who specialized in atmospheric restoration. They would work alongside human scientists and Keltheran biologists to bring Earth back to life. The planet that had been murdered was being reborn. Admiral Cross? A young voice interrupted her thoughts. Victoria turned. A human cadet, barely 20 years old, stood at attention. Beside him stood a young Vryn, her forearms holding various tools and data pads. "At ease," Victoria said with a smile. "I'm retired. You don't have to salute." "Sorry, ma'am, force of habit. I'm Cadet James Park. This is Cadet Silvex. We're both first-year students at the academy." Victoria studied them. "Park any relation to Commander Park?" "My father, ma'am. He's still serving on the Indomitable." "He's a good officer. You have a lot to live up to." The young Vryn stepped forward nervously. "Admiral, if I may ask, how did you do it? How did you forgive us for what our ancestors did?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. It was a question she had been asked many times over the past 5 years. The answer was never simple. "I didn't forgive everyone," she said finally, "and I never forgot. What happened to Earth, to my people, was genocide. Nothing changes that. But I realized something during the war with the Devourers. Hatred is easy. It's simple. It feels good in the moment, but it's also poison. It destroys the person who carries it." She walked to the viewport, gesturing at Earth below. "My grandmother survived the bombardment. She spent 3 years underground, eating rations, drinking recycled water, not knowing if rescue would ever come. When she finally made it to the colony ships, she was angry, so angry. She wanted revenge." "What changed her mind?" asked Cadet Park. "Time and perspective. She realized that if we spent all our energy on revenge, we would become the very thing the Council founders feared, a species driven by violence and hatred. She wanted humanity to be better than that." Silvex looked down at her feet. "My grandmother was one of the ones who tried to assassinate you during the trials. She's in prison now. I've never even met her. My parents are ashamed of what she did." "You're not responsible for her choices," Victoria said gently. "Just like humans born after the bombardment aren't responsible for what happened to Earth. We judge beings by their actions, not their ancestors' actions." "Is that why you helped us during the invasion?" Silvex asked, "even though we didn't deserve it?" Victoria smiled sadly. "Deserve has nothing to do with survival. The Devourers didn't care about our politics or our history. They just wanted to destroy. If we had let them kill Council species out of revenge, we would have been just as guilty of genocide as the founders." She turned back to the cadets. "Besides, I had seen the archive footage. I watched your founders murder my people. I saw them celebrate it, and I realized something. Most of the beings in the Council had no idea what their leaders had done. They were horrified when they found out. Some of them cried, others got angry, but they weren't the ones who pulled the trigger." Down on Earth's surface, work crews were rebuilding New York City. The old ruins had been preserved as a memorial, but around them, new buildings rose. Human architecture blended with Keltharan design principles. Vryn engineering made the structures stronger. Dendari artists created beautiful murals on the walls. In the main memorial plaza, a monument stood. 4 billion names were carved into black stone. Every person who had died in the bombardment. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it, to remember what hatred and fear could accomplish. At the academy itself, training was underway. Human instructors taught Council cadets about Earth's military doctrine. Council instructors taught humans about diplomacy and cultural sensitivity. The goal was to create officers who understood both war and peace, who could fight when necessary, but preferred to talk first. Esreth, now the Union's first historian general, gave lectures about the importance of truth. She told students about the sealed archive, about the choice to reveal the genocide even though it destroyed her career. "Truth is painful," she would say, "but lies are poison. They corrupt everything they touch." Fleet Admiral Zhao had also joined the Academy's staff. He taught tactical operations and ship command. The hatred that had consumed him for so long had faded, replaced by a grim determination that the genocide would never be forgotten, but also never repeated. He kept a picture of Marcus Chen on his desk. Sometimes students would see him staring at it, lost in thought. Victoria walked through the academy's halls with the two young cadets. They passed classrooms where humans and Vryn studied together. They passed training rooms where Keltherin and human marines practiced close combat techniques. They passed a library where students from all 8 species worked on joint research projects. "This is what Marcus died for," Victoria said quietly. "Not revenge, not conquest. This unity built on truth and justice." "Do you think the Devourers will come back?" asked Cadet Park. "Yes. Our long-range sensors still detect them beyond the rim they're building. Growing, learning from their defeat. One day they'll return, and when they do, they'll be stronger." "That's terrifying," said Silvex. "It is," Victoria agreed. "But we'll be ready. Not as separate species competing for resources, but as a united civilization. That's what terrifies the Devourers, not our weapons or our ships. Our ability to work together despite our differences." They reached the observation deck where Victoria had started her day. Through the viewport, Earth continued its slow rotation. Ships came and went. Life continued. "My grandmother told me one more thing before she died," Victoria said. "She said that the universe doesn't care about fairness. Bad things happen to good people. Innocent civilizations get destroyed. But we have a choice in how we respond. We can become bitter and cruel, or we can become better and stronger. She chose to believe in humanity's better nature. So did I." The two cadets stood silently, processing her words. "You're both dismissed," Victoria said. "Get back to your studies, and remember, you're not just representing your species. You're representing the future." They saluted and left. Victoria returned to the viewport, alone with her thoughts. A message notification appeared on her data pad. It was from Commander Park on the Indomitable. "Admiral, long-range patrol has detected increased activity at the rim. The Devourers are moving again. Not an invasion force yet, but scouts, lots of them. Thought you should know." Victoria smiled grimly. She had known this day would come. The peace was temporary. The threat was still out there. But this time, humanity wouldn't face it alone. She looked down at Earth, at the ships working to heal the planet, at the volunteers from across the galaxy working together. She thought about Marcus Chen, who gave his life so others could live. She thought about her grandmother, who survived genocide but refused to let it define her. "We're ready," she whispered to herself. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Far beyond the galactic rim, in the cold darkness between galaxies, the Devourer machines watched and calculated. They had learned from their defeat. They had studied the organic beings who had repelled them. They understood now that these species were dangerous, not because of their weapons, but because of their ability to unite. The machines began building new ships, different designs, better weapons. They would return to the galaxy, and next time, they would not fail. But they made one miscalculation. They assumed that organic beings, given enough time, would inevitably turn on each other. They assumed that old hatreds would resurface. They assumed that fear and suspicion would tear the Union apart. They didn't understand what humanity had taught the galaxy, that forgiveness was not weakness, that unity was not surrender, that beings who had tried to destroy each other could learn to trust each other if they chose to. On the Marcus Chen Memorial Station, in a classroom filled with young officers from 8 different species, an instructor asked a question. "What is the greatest weapon a civilization can possess?" A human cadet raised her hand. "Kinetic bombardment." "No." A Vryn cadet tried. "Faster than light missiles?" "No." Finally, a young Keltherin stood up. "Hope. The greatest weapon is hope, because it's the only thing that can survive despair." The instructor, a grizzled veteran with scars from the Battle of the Theta Margin, smiled. Correct. Hope kept humanity alive for 300 years. Hope brought us together when we should have destroyed each other. And hope will see us through whatever comes next. Outside, Earth continued to heal. Ships from all 8 species patrolled the borders. And somewhere in the darkness, the enemy prepared. But the galaxy was ready. Not because they were strong, though they were. Not because they were united, though they had learned to be. But because they had learned the most important lesson of all. That survival was not about being the strongest or the most ruthless. It was about choosing every day to be better than your worst instincts. To build instead of destroy. To forgive instead of hate. To hope instead of despair. Humanity had been pronounced extinct. They had returned from the grave. They had faced their would-be killers and chosen mercy over revenge, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. The story of humanity's return would be told for generations. Not as a tale of conquest or revenge, but as proof that even the deepest wounds could heal if both sides chose to let them. As Admiral Victoria Cross often said in her lectures, they thought we were extinct. They were wrong. Not because we survived in hiding, but because we refused to let extinction of the body become extinction of the soul. We remained human. That was our real victory. And in the end, that made all the difference.